然后那把有给留，那讲究sem说呢，讲究sem家他们就觉得上就国帮头把几个因是别讲究sem介绍，这讲究sem别的立家了立国来介绍，那立家了那边啦，那的把有点sem 鸟毛被说说当下边呢，那立家了要不讲图嘛的，现在的sem 把有点这鸟毛被说说sem改的给予说说当下呢把有点这给予你们也告诉人家们结果的也是。那点呢，你在当时讲起来，俺就开始是呢，电话的顾客来东岸没对吧的，就是当时电话也比电话主页给具体俺就给开始我想不起，你主不过的，俺就用东岸用一个具体我想不起些，俺就的没把水过过的，等到第二来的，等到了俺就东岸用一个具体没把水啊，当第一用一个具体主页的的的。其实这个人生大都是呢，什么当然的，我说，其他第一主要的觉得气候被他呢，那第一就是主要要的，刚刚就是说，中华就是说就用过了吧，因那做能什么啥来吧的，其实那能什么他呢，中华要一个具体个人生的鸟毛把它写的的，但第一主要的具体个人生的，第多少的鸟毛把送为。另外一是你觉得比如出生的、金巴的、小巴的、尊者老说吧，我都是这些事情，我这路能够我的做路线。
So, good evening. So we're looking at this remarkable text composed by Shantideva, engaging the Bodhisattva's way of life. And this is a text about how a Bodhisattva lives their life. So Bodhisattva has generated uncontrived bodhicitta, a mind that is set on achieving enlightenment in order to lead all beings to achieve their own individual enlightenment. Having generated bodhicitta, even though one has this remarkable determination, this determination alone will be of no benefit. The Bodhisattva needs to engage in the practices of a Bodhisattva, and these are most commonly represented as the 6 perfections. For the 6 perfections to be engaged in well or successfully requires conscientiousness. Therefore, the chapter we are looking at now, this 4th chapter, is the chapter on conscientiousness. Moreover, just like the Bodhisattva, whether a new Bodhisattva or a Bodhisattva on the high grounds, or ordinary beings such as ourselves, all of us are the same in wanting to abide in lasting, stable happiness, free from all problems and difficulties. To attain such a state, it's imperative that one recognizes what are the causes that lead to happiness and accumulate those causes. Going along with that, it's imperative that one recognizes what are the causes that lead to suffering and avoid accumulating such causes and purifying past accumulated causes. So in general, the focus in our world is on the external to the mind, as a source of attainment of happiness and overcoming of problems. And whilst to a degree this is effective, one can achieve some happiness and overcome some problems, this is entirely transitory, temporary. This is not a technique by which lasting, stable happiness can be achieved. The only way that lasting happiness, a happiness that's completely freed from all problems, can be achieved is through changing the mind. And in order to change the mind, we engage in the 6 practices, or the Bodhisattva, in order to benefit others, engages in those 6 perfections.
And the Hamowaji, Shandaji, so long as new Duchin, Duchin, Helia, Duchin, Tawata, Dagor, Titus, Notrichago, Ejerwa, just kissing to Junior Dali, Garson, she has some gen, she had around never chain the year, until a Tumbuchevena, and Chumbuchagres, and the draw chayores. So in your mom, your mom body, Gedine, Sosolia, and Nuvigirimato, Sosolia, Pendo Yunajikinea Mares. The
This chapter on conscientiousness has been presenting clearly for a while the process by which we come to recognize who or what it is that actually causes us harm. So in a general sense, we can say that what causes us harm is suitable to be called an enemy. So in society, when we think of an enemy, we always think of something external, so something material. Usually we point to people with a broader understanding, an unwanted situation. But Shantideva has guided us to recognize that our afflictions and our afflictions alone are our actual enemies. Our enemy is actually never external to us. It's never another person or situation, but it's rather our afflictions which have created the karma for us to be in such a situation. It's also our afflictions arising that lead to us experiencing a situation as unwanted. Therefore, the problem is not, our suffering does not come from what's around us, but from our way of thinking. Moreover, Shantideva has also presented so clearly that our external enemies are not our enemies by way of their very nature. This means, and we all have experience of this, our relationships with other people can and do change. Someone that at one point we despised may well become a friend. But in affliction, their very nature is to deceive and thereby do harm. Therefore, befriending an affliction or acting in accordance with the needs or the wishes of an affliction never will lead to our relationship with that affliction changing. Our afflictions only cause us harm. But if we act in accordance with others, even those that we despise, eventually our relationship with them is likely to change, but never with an affliction.
Shimbala soba, Denigi, that's a Kumaja, Jiclasso, Chasa, said this you do not say it, Digi to be Dondalaya, and so you think to be Chedo and Benesawa, Drama, Sosolia, Zubulia, Ganga, Kazitevene, Dusine Ganga Dile, Ganga di Kedo Sujine, and the Jike, Lagadi, Legituas, Legorwas, says that he said Denigi, said this you do not Jiggy, Kevin Chunju, Dondala, Denigi, Ganga. The Ganga Jumbe, Ganga Kidu, the Lagale to Webana. Danga to the Dingy Deva, Rang Simja Tamje, Kuyudunga Tada Lutrich, Tamje Kimbo, to be Chirdu, Yamaji, Yamlenje, Dipopon, Girupje, Yamlenje, that Deniki Jelly, Delia, Ganga Zuna, Ganga, Sema to go came in the suit, Sever never to Sevachi, Sevacom, Sevachi, Sutuba Jeja, and the Bezuche, Mutis in Yamlenje or Esaji, because in
the verses we looked at last week, we compared the situation between the Bodhisattva, the aspirant Bodhisattva, who holds the welfare of all beings in their heart. In other words, their goal is to ease the suffering of all beings and to lead all beings to a state of lasting happiness. So when you compare, and to bring this about, such a being, such a practitioner, will experience many challenges, problems, suffering, difficulties, and so forth. But the goal for which they endure such hardships, in other words, the goal for which they do not allow such hardships to deter them, is a great goal, the greatest of goals. And here, the Bodhisattva, the aspirant Bodhisattva, calls to mind how ordinary people in the world endure extensive hardship for the sake of minor benefit. And the illustration was specifically about those who work outdoors in all weather, or those who work in fields where there is no social status. They endure tremendous problems and difficulties in order to gain some form of living, to have some temporary pleasures, overcome some of the life's difficulties. So for minor rewards, they endure so much. So for ourselves who have our hearts set on the greatest of goals, we should bear this in mind. This will make it so much easier to skillfully deal with all hardships and difficulties we do encounter as we work for the welfare of all. Moving on to the 41st verse in the 4th chapter. I did promise to liberate from their afflictions migrators of the 10 directions, reaching as far as the ends of space. At that time, I myself was also not liberated from their afflictions. Rangdun chagi duwa, dine shendun chagi mi duwa, rangi sanyo kubwa tubi chidu, rangi yu nyomo baji, rangi sanyo kubwa tubi chidu, samtani di rangdun chagi mi diye saji, diwaro chik dine ki ta dokwaru chidu yon sigiruwa. So what this part of the chapter is about is the practitioner has come to recognize, independence on the presentation in the prior verses, that our actual enemy is our own afflictions. And we need to continuously apply the various antidotes to eradicate the afflictions on our own continuum. We must be courageous and confident and continuously strive to eradicate completely these afflictions that abide on our own continuum. Now, a doubt may well arise. So striving to transform your own mind, to remove, initially weaken and then eventually remove the afflictions from your own mind. How does this benefit others? You're just working on your own mind. How can this be said to be an activity that is going to bring benefit to others? So this doubt is about to be addressed.
damjawa kelen bar waso damja so kelen bar den zada semja tham sanjo go ko be chirdu de semja nge semja tham ji do sanjo go to bar chi yin damja kelen je bar waso de signi de da chi ji do do cho ji de de do wan mo later war and damja says.
So this doubt is what is being addressed in this verse. And it's in the first 2.5 lines. No, in English, the first 2 lines. I did promise to liberate from their afflictions migrators of the 10 directions, reaching as far as the ends of space. So here, the doubt is being addressed by the person acknowledging that, yes, I made the promise to alleviate others from their afflictions. This was the promise I made.
그래서 심전 탐지기에 된다. 심전 탐지 감점 고유 동안을 최시 산유고방 토바 지기 디인장의 심전 탐지 산유고방 산유 고기 대된다. 심전 탐지기에 된다. 산유고방 토바 지기인시 탐지디 네 가르치는 탐지기로서는 간스 제발에서 제가 심전 탐지 고유 동안을 최고고도 가르치는 심전 탐지 고알에 마타와디 가르치버에서는 뇽몽베게 샤왕도 송제 디기 안에 뇽몽베 샤왕도 송제 콘심전지 고알 탈금도 디왕의 고알도 신야년의 고알도 와서 제자다 뇽몽바디 빵구도 와서 뇽몽바 빵 투구도 하면 제바치디 뇽몽바디 빵야 여바 디 뇽보 여바 다음에 또 베셔라디 뇽몽기 뇽보 뭐 뇽보 디곰바라 때네 다 뇽몽바 빵 투구 여바디 안에 하고 제네디니 심전 탐지 고알이 고유 동안을 줘야지 야상에서는 꾸기 새벽에 나 두신에 켈린 담자로 지고로 와서 제자디 꾸기 제자다 두스 켈린 남보 담자직 두스레 두지고로 와서지.
The person here is saying, I did make a promise to benefit all sentient beings, and I was very specific in the promise that I made. The promise that I made was that I'd I'd guide each and every being so that they could become skilled in dealing with their own mind and thereby eradicate their own afflictions. In this way, they gain liberation from suffering, and perhaps I can even also guide them all the way to Buddhahood. So this was the promise that I made, so you're correct to challenge me. But in order to be able to lead others to gain skill over their mind, I have to first gain skill over my mind so that I know what I'm talking about. And similarly, in order to be able to guide others to eradicate their afflictions, to weaken and then eradicate their afflictions, similarly, I too need to gain skill in weakening and then eventually eradicating my afflictions so that I can help others from a place not just of theoretical knowledge, but experience based on training, based on that knowledge. So in brief, in order to lead all beings to attain their own enlightenment, I myself have to attain enlightenment. And to do so, I have to eradicate all that hinders the attainment of enlightenment. And I've investigated and I've seen what hinders the attainment, my attainment of enlightenment is nothing external to me. It's these afflictions. These are what I need to abandon. So not only have I recognized that I have to abandon my own afflictions, I've also come to see that I can do this. It's within my capacity. Thirdly, I've come to know how to do so. I've learned the antidotes to the afflictions. And fourthly, and I'm now striving to do so. So this then is the basis of the reply to this doubt.
제가 당보 도시네 제가 심지어 탐제 감숨 고외 동안을 저 투구 민도 제바치는 투구 여바데 녀모베 심지어는 저 코와 저도 녀모베 온거 코와 저도 제자다 콘도 녀모베 온 코와 인자 코와로 코에 유녀모바데 빵 투구 두에 민도 제바치디 빵 투구 두 될년보 다음에 또 비시로 두시 녀모바데 내게 녀보 다음에 또 비시로 여바 하고네 되는 게 심지어 탐제 산주고 봐 고외 동안을 저 산주선 거기 인스네 담자 켈린 당보디 디르와다 다팅이를 쉬어 디르와다.
So therefore, what I have come to recognize is that the very cause of the sufferings of samsara is the afflictions. Every unwanted experience comes back to the afflictions of my own continuum. I've recognized that, and I've also recognized that these afflictions can be eradicated. How so? Through the cultivation of the wisdom realizing emptiness. Therefore, my commitment that I've made is to strive in cultivating this antidote, in gaining skill in this antidote, so as to eradicate the afflictions, so as to gain freedom from suffering.
안다 되네게 네 심지어는 요 고유 동안을 줘야지 상식으로 그바 인생 남자와 인자 땅에 가네스 콘솔레 판도지 고유 동안을 줘고도 가네스 안에 되게 상식으로 고고도 콘솔 녀모바데 가네스 봉아 지고도 세비다 세이르 되네게 삼다이데 되네 탑람들에 가서는 네 콜에 녀모 때 녀모베게 녀모 다음에 봐도 베셔라 때야다 되네 되게 주예고 람 냠리게 좀 바티 파 띵제 안 콘솔이야 냠낸 제주 냠네 마디 되는 건설에 냠낸 제주 되는 냠낸 제네 야 상이살이야 고타디 되는 스코구도 세 니바디 순고로와 제바제유도 디킨고로와다.
And the reason for me doing this myself in relation to my own mind, is because of the very promise that I made. The promise, or it's also the word for commitment, that I made was to lead each and every being, to guide each and every being, so that they radically transform their mind and gain freedom from suffering. And the way for them to do so is for me to guide them in how to develop the antidotes, and guide them in the cultivation of the antidotes so they become ever more powerful. In other words, to guide sentient beings to the point where they attain a path, where they cultivate a mental path leading to liberation or enlightenment. And once that path is gained, to continue to guide them, to strengthen this mental path until they actually achieve liberation or enlightenment.
Dine zang dine ge nge dus chebala lamdin je lab ni kosole lamdin je nyamnen che chubala ta korong nga la dine ge nyuba chingi duye mindu samba ne cheba chingi du chesa dine ge ma lamdin je shan le tenba la shin ye kamna me ba jidawa shin do ha go wa ana konsule dusu gazi dine pando yo ba chue ga ne stin ba no kondo pando yo ba chasa ji ma kenbi ge yen den chu go res 디 차상 캠비 윤데 상길마도 요 말 상길마도 민두스 데네 랑기 마텐 발라 랑게 랑 뇽모베 샤와도 마송와 랑 안지게 방적이 리 지게 뇽모 바다 뇽모베 바샤 리요 바나 지다와 신도 랑기 싱마레 지된 투고 말 제자다 데니기 말해야 되는스 민두 제자 데니기 다 뇽모바 바샤다 제바제 랑기 최 전을 럽던 제발라 바치 가양 매바 세트 근데 상이 코나리 샤스 제자다 현래 판도 제발라 시랑기 랑랑라 튠진 가르 상고선에 랑을 예 현래 판도 제발라 랑라 바시 괜가야 매바 고도 안에 현래 뚠바다 랑기 럽된에게 차상 시지 연된 차상 상와지 고도 제자 디푼숨 초바 상와디 괜 탐제 제바 연된 다시 푼소바도 상이마도 민도 제자 상이데다 심제 탐조 고려 동말을 줘야지 상이 살이야 고현디 탑초도 주버데 상이 고마 레샤 디인장의 심전 탐지기 된다 판도 주에 된다라 상이 고방의 마tum의 탑미도 제가 상이 현된 주비 튕긴 상이 고방의 마tum 탑미도 세베다 심전 탐 상이 고방 토벌 자오 심베게 담제 바래서 담자세 니바데.
And going along with me making this promise was the reflection that I had already done, because I developed this wish to benefit others, to help them gain freedom from suffering. But I'd also been honest with myself, because in order to have made this promise, I had to have already looked well at my own mind and thereby come to know myself well. And being honest with myself, whilst I have a sincere wish to benefit others in the most meaningful of ways, I'm really not currently equipped to help others much. Where I can, in accordance with my capacity, of course, I'll be there for them. But my capacity, in all honesty, is quite limited. Beings are limitless in number, and they all have such a wide array of karmic backgrounds. There's such an array of interdependent influences on them that beings have such unique dispositions and inclinations. And whilst I can engage with others in a general manner, I really do not have the capacity yet to help others precisely in accordance with their own individual disposition. But this is possible. It's just not where I am right now. For the Buddhas in the world, they can help others in this way. But I yet cannot. So I have to therefore also become a Buddha. This recognition was behind this promise I made. And together with this recognition is that I have identified the hindrances I've made thereby the promise to eliminate all that hinders me. So the hindrances that limit or are preventing my attainment of enlightenment, these are my afflictions. Together they're seeds and imprints. This is what I have to eradicate so that I can be of real, meaningful benefit to others. Help them precisely in accordance with their own unique personalities, to talk to them, guide them, set an example for them in a way that's perfectly attuned for who they are. I therefore have to become a Buddha for their sake. I therefore have to purify my mind from their afflictions.
지난 소수교 유모 마바바는 유모 마바는 시지윤데 푸송 속바데 기마 용 말레스 소수교 유모 마바바는 셴레 판도 개치모 차투 디엔자다 인지미제랑기 규 유모디 셴레 판도 셴심제 탐제 코르 동안을 드제 상기서 거발라 마상기 고모 토부도 상기 고모 토발라 미 발마투에 바르지긴 발시데 가르스는 소수교 유모 바디레샤 유모 바샤데 디파 방기 소다 유모 남데 마드와세 지사 소수교 유모 바 바샤데 제발 마드와나 셴레 파도 개침부지 투야민도 디장에 도시네 심 랑기 유모 바디 셴준 권예치도 심장 탐 상교고 투비 치르도 디 하는 유모 바 방발에 배수신 방고리 방발에 배신 지고를 해서 전주 선반함기.
And the verse concludes with, at that time, I myself was also not liberated from the afflictions. So at that time I made this promise, this vow from my heart. At that time, I was also not liberated from the afflictions. And I was entirely aware of this when I made this promise. And I was also entirely aware of the hindrance that the afflictions, my afflictions, were posing on my capacity to be of benefit. I recognize that even though I was making this promise, I could not right now fulfill that promise. And I know why. It's because of these afflictions. The reason I'm not a Buddha is because I don't have the incredible qualities of a Buddha. And the reason I don't have those incredible qualities, or even a vague similitude of them, is because of the strength of my afflictions. Therefore, so as to fulfill this sincere wish, this heartfelt promise that I made, I have to remove all that hinders my development of the excellent qualities of the ordinary Bodhisattvas and of the Arya Bodhisattvas and eventually of the Buddhas. All that hinders the development of these good qualities are these afflictions. So therefore, so that I can grow as a spiritual practitioner and have ever more benefit in the lives of others, I have to weaken my afflictions. And so I can have greatest benefit for others through becoming a Buddha, I have to completely eradicate them. Therefore, for this reason, I'm striving to purify my mind of the afflictions and any trace of them.
투비 치료도 좀 방에 배주 제바디 랑된 차교 말에 현된 바식 차고래 제신 심전 탐지기 판도 주의하게 된다라 상유고 봐 토고디 디토베 된다라 아니 치료도 아니 녀모 방을 님보대지 봄 공배주 치고래 제자디 심전 랑이 유예 심전 탐지 상유고 봐 투비 랑이 녀모 방발에 님보대 녀모 방발에 배주 제바디 랑된 말에 제산 현된 바식이레스 랑이 디기 용야다 라니 치도 삼고와 미유디 셈전 함제를 폐배주의에 치도 니디던다 삼다제 아니 라니게 녀모 바일에 배수시도 공고로 와서 제자디 랑된 책 말에 현된 바식이에서 도나디 예시 도화디 들어와데 전시sem바디 랑네 내지게 랑이 녀모 바위에 치도 랑이 산요고 바 투비시도 전 랑된 책이 말에 베스네 지자디 랑된 말에 현된 코네레스 지단 현기 된다라 삼다지 현인의 판도 주의에 튕겨라 산요고 바 고고도 디见的 디고 디면의 지투사 말에 지자디 현의 판도 주의에 되는 디고 토고 디 토발라 바시리 가서 녀모 바랑이 녀모 바제시 디자 녀모 바데 방고도시 녀모데 고미야디 현된 바시 차고 해지래.
So therefore, from right now, I will emulate the Bodhisattvas, and I will strive to eradicate their afflictions. And my reason for doing so is so that I can be of ever more benefit to others. So this means that all the obstacles and challenges that I encounter, I will deal with them skillfully for the sake of being of more benefit to others. Similarly, all the success I gain in my spiritual development, that is for the sake of others. I will ensure that I am not acting under self-interest. In fact, this too, I can say is a promise. All the success I will experience, I will not rejoice in that I'm benefiting, but rather that I can now be of more benefit to others. Likewise, each problem I overcome, I will not take joy in having overcome a problem for my sake, but rather that I can be of more benefit to others. So therefore, the answer that is being given, that whilst focusing on self-development, it is not out of self-interest. It is rather so that one can be of ever more benefit to others. The very purpose is to benefit others. This is what will guide one in one's self-development.
나디네 다기 최견 미시에바라 마완지들은 연밤이 대다른 연모 셴발라 따도 이 칠미도 걸자스 아니
Shantideva then continues with the 42nd verse. Also, unaware of the measure of my own capacity, was it not insane to have made such a declaration? In view of that, the destruction of my afflictions is never to be drawn back from.
그래서 나디 다기 최견 미시에바라 마완지들은 연밤이 세 딩이디 당부이다 디신열 셰바티나 저와차 중거래. 그래서 다기 최견 미시에바라 지들 자와 연밤이 세리 그다음 다기 최견 미시에바스디 소소라는 기 샘전 탐지요 고외둥을 배지게 저 투구 뒤에 투구 민 뒤에 소소를 누버 예매게 소소기 지 투가 예매게 안지게 뉴밤 체데 마셰바이나 아니 니네 하 먹어지 야 기니 gün에 하 먹어지리야 아니 샘전 탐지요 고외둥을 저 상에서 그 인세 케일인의 남자바디 이 녀만 하지로 와서 그러다. 그래서 녀만 옛날에 그 돈다 줍나 그렇게 하고 등에 지긴 랍시 그 삼마당 랍시로 와. 제가 되니게 삼마당 제 다기 최견 미셰바 마와지의 녀바 민시를 제가 다기 소소라랑기 샘전 탐지교 코위 동아를 죄제 야겹 되게 소소는 뉴바에 두에 민도 뉴바 가리도 되니게 토구대 투민도 샘베 삼로 균에 마당하지 되니지 소소기 뉴비게 제 투비 뉴비에 최대 하 먹어야지 아니게 샘전 탐지게 되는 샘전 탐지 상에서 고역이 있으니까 되니 셰바나 되니 뭐 되니게 고역이 마와시도 고역이 있으니까 되니게 담자 켈린 바이나 되니 띵요만 하시로 시리에 소다 마와지의 녀바 미스.
These first two lines are included in the same outline as the verse above, so the meaning is as expressed. Also, unaware of the measure of my own capacity, was it not insane to have made such a declaration? So here, there's an acknowledgement that if I had not investigated myself well, if I had not already come to know myself well, and therefore if I was unaware of my limited capacity, then and through this limited capacity, my limited capacity to actually lead others towards their liberation, such a promise such as that would have been like the utterances of a crazy person. So to be fair, if I had not gone through the process as guided by my teachers of coming to investigate my own mind coming to recognize where my limitations are and what their causes are, and whether those causes can be eradicated, those hindrances can be eradicated or not, and having gained skill in the antidotes. If all of that had not been done, then a promise such as that would have been insane.
소소게 로버치 투구도 민도 소소를 니바러시 예나면나 탑시 예나면나 삼다제 탑시 예나 오등이 제쇼라 킬링이로와 탑시 메나 아다딩의 연구 말한알디메 우잉의 중구 말한알 니바 메시지 킬링이 말와다 다데네게 아직 미셈 타다 셈 지금 거 쇠미지 번여버로시나 내려 아니 지 어느가 지미되는 질 어떤가지 강한 시키 로버시로 알았네 직진에 야양이 로버시 올라가 킬링이로와다 그 케일린 바인데 좀 그런 디치 그런 얘기로 같이 두고도 민도 니버이면 그런 게 삼고는 땡거 말아. 그러다 야야스 라우저로 그러가서는 그 삼다에게 제바제에게 삼다에게 그 셈기 셈고 니버 메러와 메반서 그 야야 케일린 샤로. 세상 디 케일린 샤바나 이 다스도 두야 가요 말아. 디 케일린 바디. 세상이 내가 별라서 좀 비기 되는 케일린 바이나 디스고라다.
So an illustration would be, if someone asks you for help and you say yes, without asking what you need help with, and then without investigating whether you have the required skills or not, you just say yes, you turn up, and then you with not knowing what you are doing, get involved, you may well end up making a situation worse because you lack the skill or the training or the expertise that is required to help this person, to ease the difficulty that they are experiencing. So what benefit follows? None at all. And in fact, you may well end up making a difficult situation much worse. 코로나를 제베지 투에 누가 여다면 제바지는 코로나 누가 여다 야양이 제거서 킬링이로와 디메네 킬링이 말와 직대로와 데네게 셈 릭수에 맞으면 소소게 셈 데네게 제바지 마트에 셈 타나면 연보로시나 야야라시로와 거디로와 다시 데세니로와 디네 별마서나. In the world, it generally is like this. Before we ask someone for their help, we will have thought to ourselves, do they have the required skills or not? And similarly, the person being asked would go through the same thought process. Do I have the required skills and capacity? Do I have the time? Do I know how to solve the problem as described and so forth? So this, in general, is the approach taken.
디네 심지어 탐지기 된다는 탐지기 된다라 산조고바 토벌 지긴스베 담제네 뇽모 보월 쩨바디 제사 코제바치 삼노땅 아니 덴두스네 그런게 심지어도 코에 둥알 투구되 민도 제바치 투구여바데 통 세명해바니 디네 심지어 탐지 코에 둥알 저할이 탑람 가르가르고도 쓰네 디야하고 와지 하케 디네 하고네 디네 탑람 디 된다라 산조고바 토고 디 탑예게 된다라 lam nyomo be nyembo denit no komje lam nyamne jegudu sen di nyamne chigores di shen semjen tamje dondalya du sene donda gyachimu duye dondala ji korongi nyuba kari ma hago wa jeba je semenge ba nyeje ne dene nyamne chigores jezadi ye das minyo manashin na denike samda ka madawa cheje odangi jige semjen tamje le pemba 심자의 산예생이 꾸긴세야디 데니게 삼단세 유마레스 년바 나신 킬린지시게 마레스 심자 탐지기도 산요고바 심자 산요고바 끼긴 심자의 산요고바 토바 지기세야디 삼로가야 마다바 제바 마제바 아니 다하스 년바 나신지네 킬린시게 제어 유레베스는 디 마레스 제바지 심주제 체명해바니 탑람통 디 안디 하고지 데니 년모 방외치는요 년면 지고레스
So before a practitioner makes the commitment to lead all migrators who are so numerous that they reach the very ends of space itself, before they make a commitment to lead beings to attain their own liberation. The practitioner has to investigate themselves and the situation of others too very well. They need to have come to gather knowledge and then apply that knowledge to their themselves, to come to see for themselves that it is possible, not merely to take it on the say-so of someone famous, but to have come to recognize it for themselves. They need to have come to understand what samsara is. What are the causes that create samsara for each individual person? Recognize that it is the antidotes. It's not anything other, the afflictions. It's not anything other than the afflictions. This is why I am suffering. And this is why every other ordinary being is suffering too. So that needs to have been understood. The cause, the origin of suffering. Moreover, when the practitioner needs to have recognized not just suffering and its causes, or have understood samsara well, but this situation can be eradicated. That there is a path that can be cultivated within, that can bring about the complete cessation, the lasting cessation of suffering. This has to have been recognized. And it needs to have been recognized in relation to themselves. In other words, they need to have gained some skill and experience based on their training of this path. Then they will have unshakable confidence that it is possible. So they won't be lacking theory. They'll have extensive knowledge, and they won't be lacking skill. They will have gained quite some skill based on that knowledge, or some meditative experience based on that knowledge. Then they can make a promise that is heartfelt and reliable, stable. Without that having been done, but yet making the claim that I will help all beings, I'll free everyone from suffering. I will be, the English of a bodhisattva is literally a mind hero. So putting yourself up as being heroic without having done this investigation. This is stupid. In fact, it could be said to be insane. So therefore, one is being advised once again to think well, to investigate well.
자 시대 재산 대다르 시대 대다르웬 대다웬나 시대의 김전 되니시나 저 김전 가셔 봐. 지상 소수의 현이 된 풍송 초보 주발라 랑유유 녀모바 랑리아 녀모바 랑유유 녀모바디 마방바이나 네 랑이 시시 연된 풍송 초바디 기두 말 랑리아 연된 풍송 초바디 매바는 시현리아 남된 풍송 초바 기두 말에스 랑유유 랑 콩로 초보다 녀모바의 샤원도 송되바이나 시현리아 펜버투 말에스 베나 랑이 네바 냠다 강하나 날 지게 되겠네 니기 샹다 강아세 투야 로바지 투야 말에스 디나죠 소소 추나레 딤데바시나 미추나레 딤겐디 소퇴야 로바지 투미도 디나죠 랑이 강아 랑추 와라 미추나 마사디베네 진도 고랑레 강아 이테드네 샹다 추나 딤게디 소퇴 투야 갈레 하고로와 어디 디나시 제자 소수유유 소수유모모 샤원도 소 데니기 샤원 소바이나 젠리 로바지 투머 젠리 젠리 푼소바 투투면도와 데니자 젠랑 젠기 된 푼손 소바 주발라 아니 랑이 유유모바 방고도와 지단 데이터를 세디소 디진열시 김지 방고도와
Now moving to the third and fourth line.
And then detail said
So in view of that, the destruction of my afflictions is never to be drawn back from. So in view of that, this then refers that in view of what has just been presented. So that's the reason. Now we're coming to the conclusion. So in view of that, so this is what has been viewed or recognized, is that I have to destroy my own afflictions. I have to completely remove them so that not a trace is left. That is the only way by which all the incredible qualities that are required to transform the lives of others can be developed within my own mind. An analogy could be drawn that if someone is drowning, but you yourself are bound and tied and drowning, how can you hope to save someone else when there is no hope for you? So this is what has been recognized, and this is what's referred to by in view of that.
di kale khasar sa shashaba mayimba che chirdoba la ne nyama je ne anja jitu sama shaba na chirdoba chagruwa da chirmidoba se de mudu che bezu che mudu che ga nyamni chi worse ji sa su gi nyomo ba shomba la se pangbe gi nyembo tienba la de nyembo de nyomo ba pangbe chirdu nyomo be nyembo de tien komya di du da do ane chirmidoba 배수의 제제 무티제 전제 좀제 냠는지도 공부를 이 검제들 녀모바데 방고를 해서 대대 녀모 셴발라 다도 치미도 보자.
These lines conclude, in view of that, so independence on what I've just understood or just has been presented above, the destruction of my afflictions is never to be drawn back from. So this is never to be drawn back from is what is being expressed here. Is I recognize the need to repeatedly, over a sustained period, be applying the antidotes to my afflictions. This is something never to relax about or take a holiday from doing, but continuously, at all times, in all situations, I need to guard my mind. And when I notice the afflictions, not follow them, no longer be deceived by them. This is the meaning then of never to draw back from destroying one's own afflictions. So in brief then, a bodhisattva strives in abandoning their own afflictions so as to attain lasting happiness in order to help others gain freedom from suffering and attain their own lasting, stable happiness.
Timu tenzin marikpa sayade, tadi nada zowa, nyomo ba chasa, junye zawa di tenzin timu marikpa tela tene duesha dang hongro kie di yin yida nyomo ba rikta mara mungu drama le yung kore.
So for ourselves, when we look inside, we recognize just how afflicted our mind is, and that the afflictions so easily arise and abide so long. Doesn't take very much for them to arise, and not only do they arise easily and abide for a long time, but there's such variety amongst our afflictions. But if we condense this variety down into three, there's the three poisons, those of ignorance, attachment, and anger. And of the three, the ignorance of self-grasping, that is the very root. Because it's from this ignorance of self-grasping that attachment arises, anger arises, and all the other array of afflictions arise.
And in the Congress said, Gedi now the Congress Ligo Mara, the Kinchi, the Congress came at the Gedi now to get a Congress de Ligament Ligomara, Congress and the Tisumgi Nania, Congress to ski at a new Chagore. The Desha, Marikpa, in the Marikpa setting out, you thought to Gedina Yevare Chagore. And in it, Desha de Yevare Chagore. The Congress said, Zamzamato, Tata, you thought to Gedina, Yungomarwa.
Furthermore, of these three, one is not that common, and that is anger. So again, this word anger, in all its iterations from frustration and annoyance to rage, is not that common. Much of our time, we don't have any iteration of anger within us. But the other two, ignorance of self-grasping and attachment, these we could probably say are continuously present.
망체로 그디나 주연되어서 최고래. 제사다 되셔될 멍부어 와주기 세또 괴 담라 차베 세라 또세데 세라 차베 차바 괴 두로 괴라 차베 차바 단지면은 아주기다 괴다 튕겨 강발라서 봐 튕겨 차베 차바 체계로와 딘디나나 담년다 소술이 세다 또 괴나네 그냥 담년다 민리야 저서 담년다 차베 차바 중으로 제가 수주제 세라 차베 차바단 나네 괴라 차베 차바 담년다라 차베 차바 세데 디용고를 하는데.
Attachment has many expressions. It arises so easily in relation to so many things that we can say it probably is continuous for us. So it can arise in terms of the pleasures of the senses, wanting to have comfortable fabrics, nice tastes and smells and sights and sounds, but also in terms of reputation. Because it's so common, we care about what others think of us, what they're saying about us, how they view us. So our attachment arises so easily.
근데 연자다 되셔야지 나서 기디 남상아서 하고야 깔려 하버리고 나는 저기 두신에 방한 시간을 두신 된지 되어있는 된마 추춘춘 실리고는 된간 되는 추딜리고 하고 말와 누추야야야야야 된 롬바차 된 차상 롬바차 된 소속이 야수볼이야 질롬바다 하고 지내 줄리셔서 하고 말도 당번에 하고 말와 제사데 디나시데 되셔야 소리야 배 참으로 지도 신고를 당하서 자꾸 슉 첨보라지 레여도 가서 어당아 되셔야죠. 되셔야겠어서 하고 말도 마 당번 레여도네 곧 첨보진 이거 말 중요진 이거라도 sende는 딜레이한 거래. 얘네 자다 되셔야되게 배 레레레야 배냥 레로래다.
So not only does attachments have so many expressions, because we are so very used to it, it is difficult for us to notice it. In reality, by the time we notice it, it is already quite strong within us. One imagines being in some water, and that water is being heated. By the time it has been heated to the point where it's uncomfortable, we've already been sitting in that water a little while. So the water slowly has been increasing in temperature by degrees of degrees. So very slowly, in minor increments, the water is heating. But it's only once it's heated a certain amount that we notice something uncomfortable, especially if we're distracted by various pleasures. Then suddenly it becomes uncomfortable. This is how it is with our attachment. It arises so easily, but largely goes unnoticed. And by the time it is, it's usually strong and dominant within us.
다음 저기 제 칼라로 심보를 송선은 람사델이야 차고게야 잘라야고를 송선은 델레 차고게야 아니 지기 미로 지야고를 통선은 델레 차고게야 아직 소설이야 지 데스 미수기의 지후로 제단 지야고도 통을 하셔는 한델레 차고게야 소소 어당아 진 차고게야 소소기 담냐다 차고로와 제가 되니게 차고게야 되게 배지 용고를 제가 레로 가수에스가요 말에 자도
We just take how easy attachment arises through our eye sense power. We just merely need to see someone we find attractive, and attachment arises. To taste something or see food, food that we see that we know we tend to really enjoy, just seeing it, an attachment arises. Or to see an object that we would like to have, attachment arises. Or see an object that we think will say something impressive about us if we had it. Attachment arises. It really takes so little for it to arise.
So 차바게나 차베 온게 콘르게 요래 차베 온게 나게게 요래 차베 온게 나 차바 숙셔로 요래 데네 직녀모바데 직다 말아지 레무로 데네자 차베 제가 데네 인자 당한 저기 차바디 nye 콘로 단 차바디 nye 파빠야게 메버서야 탑람리아 ane 가르스모로스네 베네 콘로로 붙이나 건 내가 가야리아 시안리아 잠바다 제위 삼담바다 콘르게야디 가거로와 니나시 당한 지금 류마 예수 예죄되면 주름 송해야 돼. 지난 디기 류마 예수 예죄되면 주름 송해야 되겠다. 디기 송여도 아니 컨트롤당 아니 되지 차바되기 봐. 내가 봐가야리야. 탑람지에 주름 송해야 돼. 심리하디 류마 예죄되면 주름을 와다.
This attachment that arises so easily is the affliction that almost always precedes other afflictions, such as anger, such as pride, and all the other afflictions. So antidotes then to deal with these, for example, a very skillful antidote to deal with anger is to develop genuine love and compassion. Wanting others to be happy, wanting others to be freed of suffering. If those are the minds dominating one, anger is not going to arise. If you genuinely have a wish for others to be happy, you're not going to get angry at them. If you genuinely have a wish for them not to suffer, you will not get angry at them. A further excellent antidote is that of ethical restraint, where one primarily trains one's mind to be restrained from coming under the influence of the afflictions, and thereby one's speech is restrained from being influenced by the afflictions as well as one's physical behavior. So ethical restraint also restrains us coming under the influence of attachment and anger.
아니 이제 원벽과단 봐서 원벽과단 봐. 지난 차바다 컨트롤라 소바 빠에 원벽과단 봐. 원벽과도 다버디 대시실게 원벽과단 봐서 제가 차바 내가 차바던 컨트롤 마이게게 don달라 원벽과단 봐. 송교블에 원벽과단 봐 지고 그래서 원벽과단 봐서는 미기 차바게게 율리시라 마다서 대교 말해서 마다 컨트롤자서 유유지요네 컨트롤자서나 차바게서 유유네 미기 될이야 마다와지 바 원벽과도 미다교 말해서 되네야 즉 차바게기 유다 되네기 차바게기 아니 컨트롤게기 율이야 담려야 암초이 많이해서 그러다 미기 마다 암초이 많이 되네 삼루고 디고를 삼마다서 컨트롤게기 유다 차바게 유디고야 될이야 삼마다샤고 마다샤고 그래서 지산 차바게서 유디를 될이야네야는 섬든 차바게로 그러와 콘르게서 유디 될이야네야는 섬든 콘르기로와 지산 될이야 원벽과단 봐 지산 미기 차바게 유다 콘르서 유래 미기 봐 어딜 때는 이 차바게다 콘르게 내가 열심히 두시네 미기 봐 맞다 봐 어디냐 봐나 딜 차바게다 콘르게 내가 뒤매냐 봐 되네 양지게 삼로드네 디야 삼마다 봐 진짜 원벽과단 봐시리 미기 원보 나의 원보다 이기 원보라서 숨가게 차바게다 콘르게 유래 삼마다 두스카샤베나 두시네 되네 콘르게다 고가시도 고캡샤베 나로 주지요 말와 진짜 디긴지네 아니 원벽과단 베이나 된내가 아니 그 되샤다 콘르게데 용주고 해서 답람직디 숨거와
A further excellent technique, an excellent antidote, is to restrain our senses. So what this means is that we need to watch our mind and see what triggers our afflictions. We need to come to recognize what it is that we see that leads to the arisal of afflictions, such as attachment, anger, and so forth. What it is that we hear that leads to the arisal of the afflictions. What it is that we taste that leads to the arisal of afflictions. So here we need to watch our mind, see what triggers our afflictions. Then, if we have done the prior reflections well, and have recognized that our afflictions are our sole enemy. Our afflictions only ever harm us. In fact, they have already enslaved us. The limitless sufferings experienced across our rebirths are due to these afflictions, and they can only ever harm us. Indulging in them, excusing them, never produces anything other than strengthening afflictions and more suffering. So if we've reflected well on that, and now we are seeing what it is that we eat, what it is that we smell, what it is that we hear, what it is that we see or watch, and that therefore leads to our afflictions arising, then it's time to be self-disciplined and be honest with ourselves. I may think this is something pleasurable, but the truth is, it's just leading to the arisal of my afflictions, and thereby creating ever more causes for suffering. So this antidote is about restraining our senses from what leads to the arisal of the afflictions.
파 차고 도에게 탑람 가르고서 미도 보고봐 세지 미도 보고 송고로 제가 유 가르리아 아니 차고 숙심부쇼베네 유텔라 차고 숙심부 계세게 유텔라 미제 미도 보고 뭐래 사실.
Furthermore, especially for what one is attracted to, so objects of attachment, whatever it may be, look for its faults, especially when the attachment is strong. This strong attachment means you are strongly exaggerating the positive qualities. So your attachment has completely deluded you and has completely hidden the faults or made the faults seem insignificant. Correct that. Look for the faults. Identify the faults and come to see the object in a more realistic manner.
내가 저기다 되니기 배네 유 망고용으로 나 되니 배네 칼라로 사야로 동야로 지라 삼담배네 나데 넘기때 될이야 차고 쉬우 주변에 되네 될이야 미도 유 될미네 차고 미도 보고 봐나 디 규디게 칼라디게는 지 유다마를 두바 유 안데니기 제다마를 될이야 안은 주고를 뇌야게 지 망고 유디게 되니시 지그리 안배네 체로 그러지네 게요도 가버네 아직 될이야 류다 안 쪼고다 다마라 잡지 되는 류 제디가 지그리 되니게 안 될이야 아주 류래 뇌야게 게 망고 유팅하다시 안 될마 안직마 산에 센마 직마 카나마 루 사야데 되니 파소기 파 답답단 제리게 파파 두디니 집어 제대 쪼바를 마 되시네 다 쪼바 차르와 칸마 두 되면데 쪼바 쉬우지 자 산이마트바 차게 수인나 먹으라기로와 되니 되니 삼다야다 되니 마세스 미번 미유다산 돈 말에서는 되니 고 돈을 마치네 되니 쪼바는 거 줄마 줄마 유야마도 베지메 되게 디마카 아니지 수유토나 마가와 마다 디마카 되겠지 되니 게지 제가 칼라시보세야디 주데 삼단에 파젤리아 툭셈지마도 젤리아 용셈마도 감하치지마도 가셔지 가시지리 젤리아 도시 되었으면마도 심보사 인티마도 민도와스 제가 윤림 주전에 칼라 심보세 되는 심입니다 델리 차고 끼어가서 민도와서 도시네 칼라 코로나상 다지 그렇게 칼라 그냥 가를리아 차고 있는 대랑상 델리 미치 그런 거 규인데 너주에 두스 삼단데 심보세 제레의 투스마데 니마 미베다산의 심부스야야 말에 칼라나를 말룸 바라들 심부스야야 말에 진짜 심부스에 제레 투스지스마데 민도 까르 세간 가시지마데 민도 왔대 데레 잡게 와서 가민도 와서 도시네 삼다죠 콤바이나 유텔레 착벽에 착과도 슈처로 중 당리에서 도리에서 왔다 도시네 탑람 순거로와 잡으 슈중 따야려
Attachment to delicious tastes from what we eat, what we drink. This is very common. And when we watch our mind, we can see that when we think of a particular food that we really enjoy, merely thinking about it, attachment arises. We get excited. We start making plans to get it. Then, if we see it or smell it, we feel a change in our body from this attachment. having it right before us. Maybe if we're trying to make prayers and offer it, our mind is really on the food. The offering is a mere expression of sound. There is no heart behind that offering. It's very easy to see the strength of attachment that rises towards delicious foods. Being a strong attachment, we need to apply our antidotes. So here we just think to ourselves, so this delicious food, it's not that I don't enjoy it. Yes, I do. It's delicious. How long does that taste last? When we look, when we watch, when we eat, it's really just those first few moments that it tastes good. Then we're already distracted, back to conversation or our thoughts of what we're watching. And then we're eating joyfully, but distracted. We're hardly experiencing much joy because our mind's gone off elsewhere. And moreover, what makes that food so fantastic is a collection of an incredible number of causes. There's nothing in that food that makes it fantastic. It's all these causes that have come together to create the food in precisely the way that we need it. If it's a little bit different, we're disappointed. Moreover, there's a lot of cultural reasons that we are particularly excited behind this cause, behind this food. We also then see that this is just a creation of ours, creation of our mind. And then we look at the physical process. If we enjoying this food with someone else, if once they have taken some of that delicious food, if some of it fell out of their mouth, we would hardly reach over and claim it. It's now disgusting. Likewise, when later it passes through our body in one of various ways, we don't get excited by the smell. We no longer want to touch it. So here we are starting to recognize that there's nothing in this food to get excited about other than what we are creating in our minds. When we really look closely, we see that all this pleasure that we're so excited about is going to be experienced for a few moments on our tongue. And that's it. Is this really a goal worthy of striving for? And when we look at that excitement in our mind, when you're just thinking about the food, when it's before us and then when it's approaching our mouth, we're so excited about such momentary pleasure. Then we see how ridiculous this all is.
다지 균 다지 미도 보고면 다지 유 제베게 야지게 저게 밀이야 있네 균롤이네 되는 게 제워질이야 미 차고 숙심을 기회는 내가 미제 미도 보고면 도시네 고면은 내가 녀모바 되 차바게디 숙충도야 다 차고 마게디 용거래 제가 되는게 탑람 제가 되는 미도 보고면 되는 수tum 소야 되는 바위에 된세야디 sembayetina ombe godam base de chaza nga ji nyomo ba ke ya o de nega kasore meba ke ma ke ba de ke ma ke tablam le da tablam de sungol jenege komi nyamne je de ke.
Especially for objects of attachment, I encourage you to use this reflection on the faults or the undesirability of whatever it is you're attached to. Food is the illustration, but any material object and also people and animals that you are attached to. Look at them not through the lens of attachment, but have the knowledge that attachment exaggerates the good qualities of whatever you are attached to. So remind yourself of the faults of that person, that animal, or the material object. And in this way, come to see them in a more realistic light through reducing your attachment. When your attachment is reduced through reflecting on the flaws or the undesirability of whatever the object is, then with now weakened attachment, it's much easier to apply consistently conscientiousness and ethical restraint. And through applying conscientiousness and ethical restraint, or being conscientious and applying ethical restraint, then you can keep your attachment at bay.
On desoge nyomo batige nega modusmado daya zawani mebadi 대수 안지 수투고 말에 되네 자다 녀모바 되차던 콩로지 자와네 매버 수에디 녀보디 가르딩 거스네 디용석이 자와디 가르스네 디로한 덴진 마릭 바세 다스 마릭 바세 좋아 지상한테 신도를 마선 자와디 맞네 강아디 야가 가네스 제비네 내가 비아마기에 또 두구두구 샤요로 마도 고 자와니 마기에 샤요 마가 그냥 찐치를 기용으로 지상 디나시 되셔 콩로 자와나 마기에디 나도 두스네 미두고 공바다 옴비고다 바지수기 자와니 마기에 수투고 말에 모두 왜자다 자와니 매버도 가르소거든 요모버 되셔 콩로 자식 기스게 자와디 가르시스네 덴지 마릭 바레샤스 지상 덴지 마릭 바디 임바 하고네 덴지 마릭 바디레야 녀보 덴지 디 녀보 다음에 바토베 동방이 또비 셰랍지 검제 디 검제네 디 동방이 또비 셰랍 검디 동이 검발에 되네 동이 또비 셰랍데 같이 거니 진난 가와레 지사동이 또비 셰랍 로디 같이 누베 쳇시로도 다 진변 덴버도베 덴지도 슈슈슈 로두스네 두스네 덴지기 매바 방요도 되는 녀모바 자와며 방사래 자와베 방사는 녀모베 얘기는 매버리다 녀모베 얘기는 매버래 지사데 녀모베 매버 차선서 녀마디와 디부사진 나서 얘기 디부가서 바차 레로 같이 사이네 디부미야 말데 끼요 말에 끼인디 매바 차서 추면나 네 사다 추면나 사번지나 뉴게 얘기는 말바다 어디 나신 디사당 아주 녀모바 자와디 녀보티엔디다 다제 담에도 비셔라 검제 디네게 아니 녀모바 자와는 방고 그래서 두순 거다 담에도 비셔라 동반이도 비셔라 검발라 디네 동반이 또 거래 동반이 또 발라 동반이 제바제데 내 땡진 제어 주위 삼다 제바제제 두시네 안 땡되게 남자다 동반이 또 비게 탑람 망보스 규림 삼다제 또 차고로 와 나 님보데 당아서 녀모 방고래서야디 녀모바 내가 마케발라 빵 지체 님 마케발 게 사와디게 곧 제메로 하다 녀모바 디베 사셔게디게 디바샤야마도 다 녀모 마케바들이야 바위에 대바 온베 고담바 되네 수좀 유마이스 니체팀에 수좀 소야 아니 갈포레 아니 직 유텔미 비 차고 싶지무 얘기나 델이야 아니 미두보 거미야 아니 유리미보 콘르기에네 델이야 잠제 거미야 두스미야 되게 내가비 콘르 녀모바디게 다해 도야다 마키야 가야지 되네 자원이 매버셔야 돼 동바이 또 비셔라 거미야 되지 두시는 공발에 되네 완전 녀모바 동고 그래서 두순 거다
So these antidotes that I've mentioned, love and compassion, ethical restraint, thinking about the restraining the sense doors, thinking about the undesirability of what we are attached to, these are excellent antidotes to rely on. But none of them will be able to completely eradicate the afflictions. This is because all the afflictions share a single root cause, the ignorance of self-grasping. So just, if you say cut your grass, mow your lawn, but you don't weed it beforehand, those weeds, nicely trimmed, not so visible, but they're going to grow back quickly. This is the case with our afflictions. We need to apply these temporary antidotes, but eventually we need to deal with the root cause. And to deal with the root cause, we need the specific antidote that does get to that root cause, the wisdom realizing emptiness. So as one develops our wisdom or our intelligence that is understanding emptiness, to the extent we develop this, to that extent, we weaken our ignorance of self-grasping. And as our ignorance of self-grasping weakens, or to the extent it weakens, all the resulting afflictions, they too weaken. They will still arise, but they'll start to arise less often, be less strong, have less duration eventually. So this is what comes from even starting to cultivate the wisdom understanding emptiness. And in the end, we'll be able to completely eradicate our ignorance. And when our ignorance has been severed, then, just like when the roots of a seed, of a weed have been pulled out, nothing will grow from that weed. So too, when our ignorance is severed, no affliction of any type can arise. So in brief, we need to abandon our afflictions. The sole enemy only causes us to suffer. To do so, one needs to recognize just how harmful the afflictions are, to have the determination required. In addition to that, or based on that, we need to then learn and gain some skill in the temporary antidotes. That's where we start. Those temporary antidotes, such as reflecting on the undesirability of what we attach to, cultivating generosity, ethical restraint, patience, as well as love and compassion. These temporary antidotes we need to concentrate on or apply ourselves to, because as we gain skill in some and then all of them, our mind will calm. The afflictions are weakening, so our mind will calm. And most importantly, we will gain confidence that I can change my mind. I can gain freedom. Then with this confidence, we can apply ourselves wholeheartedly to developing the ultimate antidote, the wisdom realizing emptiness. So then we can conclude there for tonight. Thank you all so much. But if you have some questions, then feel free to ask. Then thank you. Thank you very much.